Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that we found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also find us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And you get more information and listen to previous shows at our website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce a relatively new friend, also a children's book author, Mirra Price, for being my guest today. Mirra, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this.
Hi.
Okay, that is Mirra. Mirra Price, I should mention, is a retired English teacher. She's also a writer, editor, and copy editor. And she also enjoys singing in her spare time, we'll say, in Women's Song of Asheville. She's an activist who believes in neo-humanist beliefs, I guess, and she supports taking care of the earth as if all living things matter. Her latest book, which we want to talk about, I'll show it here. It's very nice to send me a copy, is In the Spirit of the River. That's a children's book focused on teaching children how to protect the environment. Mirra has worked on cooperatives and has advocated for many social justice causes, including women's rights and gender equality since the 1960s. Okay. So you started when you were just a little kid. That's right. You were 2 years old when you started. Youngest person who ever did this at the age of 2. Mirra, you grew up where as a kid?
I grew up in Indiana.
Okay, and when you were growing up in Indiana, did you always know you wanted to be, I guess, first a teacher and then an author?
I think I wanted to be a teacher from like maybe fourth grade. I had a really inspiring reading, and they called them language teachers
Right.
then. And I just enjoyed hearing Miss Ford read stories so much. She got so animated when she read stories, and the way she taught us how to do phonics and grammar has been with me all my life. And from that point, I wanted to be a teacher.
Did you ever tell her that after the fact?
I wish I had of. One time when I was in college, my dad told me that Miss Ford had called me, and I think I tried to get a hold of her when I came home from college, but wasn't able to. That would have been the perfect time to tell her that, but
Because
I didn't
what a
manage to.
sweet thing. I tell people that tell your teachers, because teachers don't hear that enough. You haven't been a teacher, but anyway, so at least she'll be listening in spirit, hopefully. I don't know. Is she still around, you think?
Oh no. Wow. She was in her 30s or 40s when I was like 10. I don't think she's still
So
around.
I doubt she's around. But no, it's just a very sweet thing that you remember it, and it's a shame you didn't catch up with her. But I tell people that just a nice way to recognize teachers, thank them after the fact. So she got you interested, very exciting. And that's really neat that you remember that. And she just the way she taught, it was so unusual or different that it stuck in your mind?
Well, when she was reading stories, she just got so much into them. Sometimes she would be wiping the tears from her eyes. I mean, she was just so involved in the stories, and she would do the voices of the animals, and it was really inspiring for a kid to hear that. And it was different than most of your other classes. It was entertaining and engaging, and as well as educational.
Did you try to do that in your teaching?
Yes, I love to read stories and tell stories to children. I think they learn from stories very, very easily.
Because what I'm impressed with, frankly, with you telling the story, is that's how I also learned. I was a teacher as well. And I remember I took from my mentor, my favorite teacher, I took much what he did and tried to bring into my class. So if you saw somebody else do it well, that's a big compliment to them that you pay it forward and you try to do the same thing too. So talk also about something else I mentioned in the introduction, and you're going to have to teach me a little bit about it. What is the uh, neo-humanist, I guess, movement, or what would you call it?
Well, neo-humanism is a theory or an educational methodology, and it builds on humanism. 19th century humanism, as purported by John Stuart Mill and others, talked about that you don't need a God, or you don't need religion. He thought that you can base your life on moral values and social obligations, and you don't have to base it on religious belief. Since then, there are Christian humanists. Neo-humanism, or new humanism, goes one step beyond humanism, and it includes the environment, animals, plants, rivers, the ocean, the sky, trees, everything. It's like we are all involved in a web of life, and we all depend on one another on this earth in order to survive and thrive. And that's the basis of neo-humanism. And that's what our book, In the Spirit of the River, wants to instill in children.
So how did you get interested in it yourself?
Well, I, for a long time, have been a member of PROUT, which is progressive utilization theory. It is an alternative to capitalism and communism, in which there's some private enterprise, but a lot of the businesses are cooperatives. And in PROUT, we believe that everyone can and should have their minimum necessities of life taken care of, which we don't find in this society. So in PROUT, we try to take this theory of neo-humanism and make it a reality, in which we want to make sure that, like I just said, everybody has education, medical care, proper housing, everything that they need in order to survive and have a great life. So with the book, we're hoping to have children look at their environment not as something to tear down and cut trees and make money and build all these condos and houses, and to look at, when they're in school, they're being taught that the most important thing is getting a good job and making money. I mean, it's important to take care of yourself financially, but when in capitalism you feel driven to make more and more and more money, that deprives other people of their due, which we're finding now with the situation that we have with the billionaire class controlling the country.
Talk, if you would then, Mira, how the fact that so you studied in school, you kind of following this whole way of thinking. How did then three other women and you get together to write a book? How did that come about?
Well, we're all associated in one way or another with PROUT, the theory that I told you about. And to begin, Christine, who wrote a story about a council of animals, she's very concerned about the state of the environment. She belongs to Mountain True and some of these other organizations in Asheville that are working toward improving and helping the environment. And so it was her idea in the beginning to write a book for children that would discuss the environment, bring it home to them, because we're writing about our own French Broad River. So kids can go out and see the river that we're writing about. Every story has an aspect of the river.
But you had known her at some point in time, this woman?
Yeah, I've known her, yeah, for a few years, yes.
Okay. And what she say, let's get together these other women as well and
She,
write a book?
yeah, she wrote an email and asked who else would want to join her and write stories for the book.
Reminds me of like a Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland movie, let's all get together and do a movie, a show. So four women get together to write a book. Had you ever done anything like this before?
Well, I've written a lot of essays, I've written some stories. I edited a women's newsletter for 8 years. But I've never written well, I wrote one story for a collection when I was in college, but that was the only other time.
So this is kind of cool. So that the four of you then, did you divide up what each was going to write about? Is that how it worked out?
Well, we all decided what we wanted to write about, and then we would have meetings and go over each other's manuscripts and give each other pointers. And there was we had one editor, but she quit, and so the book was on the shelf for a year and a half. But Nancy, who's one of the other authors, took it upon herself to be the editor, and I was the copy editor. So that's how it worked. And we all wrote about different aspects of the river. As I said, Christine wrote about a council of animals that are working together to make the river more vibrant. I wrote about a Cherokee legend about the river. Another person wrote about the early settlers in the area, and another person wrote about an adventure story about kids getting away from pirates. And then the last story is the river itself talking to us and explaining its life.
Now, as you wrote these stories, how long, for example, in your case, did it take to write your portion of the book?
I wrote my story in a couple hours, I think.
Wow, that's pretty good. And then it went through some editing process, or
Yeah, everybody looked at it and gave suggestions. We did that. We went through that a couple times, and then I went through the whole book and copy edited for syntax and grammar and everything. And Nancy was the actual editor and made all the final decisions.
was that helpful having other people in the process and reading and critiquing your stuff?
Yeah, I found it helpful. It was cumbersome, however.
Oh, yeah, I
In
can imagine.
in the other books that I mean, I've copy edited dozens and dozens of books, um, and I've co-authored another book, and the process has not been as cumbersome as having three other people go through your stuff and wait for them. There's always a waiting period for each person, so the time just goes on and on. But I mean, it's great getting feedback from a number of people. It just takes a lot more time.
So how long did the overall process take from you have the idea for when we get together to the finished product? How long did that take?
It took 3 years, but only because the original editor at the college quit and we couldn't get materials from her. It took a year and a half.
Oh
So
my goodness.
yeah, we waited for a year and a half before we could get the materials from her and finish the editing process.
Well, you're giving folks who are listening to this kind of a good bit of advice. I don't know if you intended to, but I guess if you ever write something, especially in a collaborative effort, make sure you have a copy of every. What happened? She just had this stuff, and the other people didn't have their own copies of it. Is that what happened?
Well, she was the editor. She had the copy that, was the latest copy, and we didn't have permission to take over the editorship. We had to
Gotcha.
wait till someone was designated to take over her work.
Let me ask you: would you ever do this again in terms of a writing project to work with other people like this?
I would. I don't think I would want to work with quite so many. I might work with one or two others.
But just yeah, somebody once told me from a business standpoint, the worst form of business ownership is a partnership. This was a partnership of four women, but a lot can go wrong when you get all these other people involved. And 3 years is a long time. Just switch subjects, just almost the opposite that we mentioned before. You were involved in women's song, and you in women's song, are you a singer or what's your role with women's song?
I'm a singer, soprano. I've been in it for as long as I've been in Nashville, which is 15 years.
But isn't that a great example of a collaborative effort that works together? That you have how many women in women's song?
Well, we lost quite a few members during the pandemic, but we've gained a lot. Last week I counted 40 at rehearsal. And in fact, I'm supposed to be at rehearsal right now.
Okay. Well,
I was going to be late.
okay. Well, thank you. But yeah, it's just so a great example. And I just did a show on women's song that,
No, yeah, thank you. I told when I mentioned to Cappy that I was a member, she said, "Oh, let's have women's."
well, they were great. And the music director I was so impressed with. But a great example, the four of you got together, but they have, 40, 50, whatever women they have, and they put this collaborative effort together. Very impressive. Let me ask you in the subject, Mirror, in the remaining time in here, in terms of being impressive, have you introduce the story you wrote and maybe just give us a little feel for what the story is all about?
Okay, sure. Yes, I can do that. The story that I wrote is called Healing Spirit Waters, and it's based on a Cherokee legend.
Okay.
And it's the the Cherokee tribe that's over here in Cherokee. So it's close.
Now, had you heard about this legend before or the story? Did you know of it?
Yeah, I read it in a book that was edited by Dr. Barbara Duncan, who teaches Cherokee language at UNCA.
Very cool. Okay, so if you would just tell us a little bit about what story we're going here, and then I don't want you to necessarily read the whole story, but give us a little feel for what it's about.
Okay. Yeah, in this story, there's a Cherokee girl and her younger brother taking a walk along the French Broad River. And Sherry, the girl, stops to tell her younger brother a story. Sherry continues. Back then, the Cherokee looked to the river to heal them when they were sick or injured. Grandmother told us about a little boy who was walking in the woods on the Oconalufi River near Shakiongi, or Blue Mountain, and also near Kuwohi Mulberry Place, which used to be called Klingsman's Dome. As he walked along, the boy looked down and saw drops of blood on the leaves on the forest floor. He followed the blood to the riverbank, where a baby bear was standing. He watched as the bear, limping on a bleeding paw, jumped into the water and swam to the opposite shore. The boy waited patiently until the bear swam back across the river. When the bear pulled himself up onto the bank, and I'm not going to tell you what happened next, you'll have to read the story.
How did you get the idea for the story?
Well, like I said, I read Dr. Duncan wrote or edited a book of Cherokee stories, and I had read those stories. And because I've taken a Cherokee class from her before. I didn't finish it. I wasn't able to finish the class, but anyway, I took part of a class from her. And since we were going to write a book about the French Broad River, I thought, well, we can't leave out the Cherokee. I mean, they are the original inhabitants of this land, and they kept it and stewarded it for thousands of years. So I decided to write a story within a story, about the little boy and the little girl, but telling that same Cherokee story that was told by one of the Cherokee storytellers here.
In this book, so you have the story. Do the other stories follow along? Are they part of it, or are they four separate stories?
They're five separate stories. One is about a council of river animals that are trying to make the river more vibrant. One is about two little kids that are trying to escape pirates on the river. There's one about early settlers. There's a story where the river itself speaks to us.
So they're all in this book. The book is In the Spirit of the River. If folks want to get a copy of this book, what's the best bet, Mirra?
Well, right now, the best bet is to get it on Amazon. We're working to get it into one of the local bookstores, but we haven't managed to do that yet.
Okay, but so it's available as of now in Amazon, and a way to get a copy of the book. What do you see, Mirra, after? So the book is now out officially, is that correct? People can get a copy of the book?
Yeah, it's been out since September.
Okay, people get a copy of the book. What's next? Do we then get the In the Spirit of the River? Do we then get the movie or the show, or do we have? Is this just the beginning of a whole series, or even is it going to be like the Harry Potter stuff? Are there going to be other series in the book, other copies, other things following?
I don't know, but one other important aspect of the book is at the end of the book, we have information, exercises, materials about each story. So it can be used in classrooms as a resource. For example, in my story, one of my questions is the story the grandmother told the children is a legend. Do you think legends are true? Why not? When you read stories, how do you know which ones are true? And then I talk about in the additional learning material, I talk about the different bands of the Cherokee, the ones living near us on the Qualla boundary and the ones in Oklahoma, and just giving some information about are they called Indians and why are they called Indians? Is that a proper name for them? So with each story, we are making it an educational kind of lesson as well as a story to be read and shared.
What age limit would you say this book is for?
I would say between 7 and 10.
So so it's appropriate if I want to read it, finish it, that'd be appropriate for me to read. Is that correct? 7 to 10? I'm kidding a little bit. But it would seem to be also a great book for, I guess, kids to read on their own, but it also seems like it'd be a great book for parents to read to their kids. What do you think?
Yes, and especially if the children are not able, if they're not at an age in which they can read it easily, definitely it would be good for parents to read to children.
So, Mirra, what do you see down the road? So we have this one book, it's out now, people can get a copy of it. Do you have any other writing plans down the road? Or do you have any other things along this line that you're going to be working on in the future?
Well, I have been working on a memoir for a number of years, and as soon as I get a little more publicity out about this book, I'm going to go back to my memoir. And that's just me. That's not working with a group. But anyway, it's my next project.
And it's really very appropriate that's next project because now you can add that you've been on the Blaine's World show, so the highlight of your life, we almost were a couple of months ago, but now you've been on the Blaine's World show. Where do we go from here, Mirra? I just don't know, after this book, kind of cool. So again, the specifics, name of the book is In the Spirit of the River, and Mirra Price, you wrote it, mention the other authors' names if you would. Who else you wrote? Who mentioned if you would?
Oh, Christine Rusfeld, Nancy Gannon, and Sid Jordan.
Okay. And we mentioned the best way to get the copy of this book is just punch up on Amazon and you'll see it. Okay. And I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World webcast. We almost sort of were meeting in person here, at least virtually. I hope to meet in person down the road. I hope to also not only get to read the book, but I'll also then give it to a reader of my Blaine's World blog, so we'll get other people to see it. And thank you again, and also my producer, Cappy DeSetti. Hopefully, we're getting closer to meeting in person. Hopefully, we'll meet sometime down the road in person.
I hope so. Thank you so much. I
Okay, Mirra,
appreciate
that
it.
was great. Thank you.
Thank you.